Pay very close attention. I will be issuing a printed document for general use addressing the mask requirements. And it will be free of any foul language, and I will address only points of law, with the disclaimer that then and now I am not a lawyer or an attorney, therefore I cannot give legal advice. I will be covering that document designed for general consumption line by line in an upcoming video. This is not the video you are looking for. In fact, this video is a message into the future for any warrior woman or women who realize that government is a Hydra, where if you cut off one head, two more will grow in its place. Having spent 3 years in the law libraries, plural, of the University of Illinois, I learned how this system works. More properly said, was designed to not work. You can't fix broken beyond repair, and you can't kill a Hydra by cutting off a head. This video is not for the timid or the ignorant or the outright stupid. It is only for those who have the courage and intent to kill the Hydra outright. It is of no practical value to anyone else. This presentation was created by my study of the situation of the governmente requiring the use of masks, but is separate because this is the highest level of taking the fight to the enemy. This is actually where it begins, but human beings in general are coward apes that shun confrontation and will always take a less threatening pathway or escape when in danger. This presentation is the stab in the heart of the Hydra that would put it out of existence in a single blow, but humans are either pathetically below my level of intelligence, so they would never think of this themselves, never do the work to lay out the pathway, or ever believe that this was the single strategy that would free mankind, because the key word was belief. No one will adopt this strategy because of ignorance, cowardice, or belief. But belief is the personification of ignorance and cowardice. So we have a continuum. This was all spawned from the North Carolina State Constitution preamble. We, the people of the state of North Carolina, grateful to Almighty God, the sovereign ruler of nations, for the preservation of the American Union and the existence of our civil, political, and religious liberties, and acknowledging our dependence upon Him for the continuance of those blessings to us and our posterity, do for the more certain security thereof, and for the better government of this state, ordain and establish this Constitution. When I was putting together this narrative, I didn't realize that blessings was in there. So let me just slay that Hydra head. Blessing means to be sprinkled with blood. The Mithras religion, the Hebrew temple sacrifice, all had a ritual where the faithful would stand under a grate, where the slaughter priest would kill an animal, and they would literally be flooded with the blood of the animal on them. Wash me in thy blood. And for those that were too damn poor, they would stand outside of that altar grate, and the priest would grab up a little blood and throw it at him, sprinkled with blood. It's a fucking blessing. And now we return us to our regularly written narrative. Everyone knows, and especially from that little vignette, how deadly I am on religion. Okay, so they invoked Almighty God. Habeas Deus. Show me the God. Actually, kids, I'm going off script here again because this came to me while I was doing the serious legal work on this stupid situation. And it just like flashed in my mind. It was like inspiration. Sometimes, I brag about how intelligent I am. Sometimes this stuff just comes out of the ether. And to me, because this is the name of the video, this is the name of the entire concept that I'm trying to portray here. Habeas Deus. In the history of mankind, am I the only one that's holding these motherfuckers to that? And now we return us to our regularly scripted narrative. The entire reason for being of the Constitution is based on a fiction. But they invoked that fiction. So now they are under the obligation to give physical and undeniable evidence of such claim. If you were to base your system of governance on, let's say, Lincoln, then I would demand to see his actual bones with chain of custody to assure that they were really Lincoln's, and do a genetic test on the marrow just to see if he's got Melungian ancestry tracing all the way back to Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracula. And see pictures, not paintings, and examine personal writings, not be shown a monument or retold stories made up by the party. Of course, the Constitution of North Carolina fails there, right from the preamble. But I love a good slaughter and barbecue, so let us keep going. Article 1, Section 1. The equality and rights of persons. We hold it to be self-evident that all persons are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain... You could have fucking loved this. Inalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, the enjoyments of the fruits of their own labor, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, we're stuck with the whole creator thing and legal definitions and legal fictions, and pretty much Peter Pan is my representative in Congress. But what this does is it sets up the kill shot that I will deliver soon. Since they are genetic liars that play word games, how did we get from the Almighty God in the preamble to a creator? The state can create you as a fictional person, which is exactly what Article 1, Section 1 referred to. If you had a god and its name was Bob, then I would expect, quote, we the people of the state of North Carolina, grateful to Almighty Bob, the sovereign ruler of nations, and that they are endowed by their Bob with certain unalienable rights. Whenever you change the name of something, you are trying to hide something. This is why I came up with the phrase Babylonian name change that morphed into same pig, different lipstick. Criminals change their names. Yehoods change their names to hide in Hollywood, which is really strange, seeing that everyone in Hollywood is a Yehood. Demons have public and private names. Those that dabble in the black arts, like Catholics that make it to First Communion, change or adopt a new name. The occultists that change their names are trying to avoid the hounds of hell that eventually catch up with them. Section 13. Religious liberty. All persons have a natural and inalienable right to worship Almighty God according to their dictates of their own consciences, and no human authority shall in any case whatsoever control or interfere with the rights of conscience. Yeah, see Jacobson versus Massachusetts. Let's deconstruct this. The entire Constitution is based on the fiction of God. No one has seen God. No one has heard God. And if they have, they need to check their histamine levels, use shielding for voice-to-skull targeted person weapons, and turn off their fucking TVs that broadcast nothing but silent sound all day long. People that hear voices are called kooks for a reason. Wait. a Brahm who founded the 5 most pernicious religions in history, well, in the history of history, heard voices? Why wasn't he put in a straitjacket? The North Carolinians have the alienable right to worship said fiction on which the goofy collection of words called the Constitution are based, but they really stab themselves with their own vampire stake with, quote, no human authority shall in any case whatsoever control or interfere with the rights of conscience. Those are words, but they are specific words without any specific clauses like, as regarding the worship of Bob, no human authority should, for any reason, mess with what you think. No, it says no human authority shall in any case whatsoever control or interfere with the rights of conscience. So in the case of whichever it is that hates doctors, Seventh-day Adventists, Christian Scientists, I can never remember, it would seem that any of the truly faithful would just trust God by not even wearing a mask, because if you're going to catch a bioweapon, you're going to catch a bioweapon. And if you're going to die from a bioweapon, you're going to die from a bioweapon because it's God's will. This is one of the reasons why I abandoned all religions, because I have never met anyone willing to do that. Actually trust God, not just give lip service. So who is the government to stand in the way of God or you? Because you have the right, that's the key word, to act on your belief that God will kill your ass if he wants to, with the help of Fauci and Wuhan labs. The protocols of Zion are clear. Rights are that which are taken by force. A right unacted on does not exist. You cannot be granted rights. The governmente only grants privileges, which in literal interpretation is, we will let you do only what we will let you do, and nothing else. All persons have a natural and inalienable right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own consciences, and no human authority shall in any case whatsoever control or interfere with the rights of conscience. The problem here is what Ralph Winterrode pointed out more than a decade ago. No definitions. Without a definition of the word worship, we have no idea what the extent or limitations of that might be in their minds, in their conscience, since those are the freaks that penned this nonsense. It doesn't matter what you think, because if you don't act on those thoughts, then you are impotent. And if you act on those thoughts contrary to what you didn't even know what they were thinking, then they will render you impotent or dead because God told them to. The Hebrews were bloodthirsty, crazy about slaughtering animals to the point the carcasses were backlogged so bad that they turned the temple into a meat-packing plant and restaurant. Does freedom of conscience allow you to sacrifice and burn half a cow in your backyard as worship? Well, that's called a Sunday barbecue, but you know what I mean. Satanists, one of Abraham's 5 religions, enjoy the good naked woman or infant sacrifice. These are functional forms of worship, not the reinterpretation of the word worship or conscience to infer, imply, assume, or presume that it was only just in your twisted little God-fearing head. Of course, the pussy Christians took their tickets and fines and broke up when the cops who were acting under constructive fraud and color of law told them to leave a parking fucking lot while listening to a sermon on a radio. Yeah, like I said, all religions are full of pussies. Well, except for the murderous bastards, which really makes you wonder just who was killing who during the witch trials. Was it really God-fearing Christians that whispered false witness against their neighbors to have them pressed, hung, or burnt? Or was it the witches in Governmente that incited the mob who stood idly by while their fellows were murdered? This latest thing called a vaccine it's not a vaccine. It's an RNA genetic rewrite. It mocks the very notion of God and will pollute what is your very soul. So in the traditions of the witch hunts, that were really nothing but crisis act or false flag operations where people really died, then every Christian on the planet should round up every single individual involved with this vaccine holocaust and have their own local bonfires. But Christians are pussies, so that will never happen. But they are armed to the teeth, their pantries are stocked, and their powder is dry for when it really gets bad. Let's try Section 13 again my way. All persons have a natural and inalienable right to worship Almighty Bob according to the dictates of their own consciences. Within historical context, that it would be perfectly fine if I heard a still small voice inside my head that told me that all politicians must be deballed for the good of the universe, and since I am operating under my conscience, worshiping my Bob, then Bob's their uncle for their balls, and, quote, no human authority shall in any case whatsoever control or interfere with the rights of conscience. Of course, the mere suggestion of deballing the Yehudi dynasty family members that make up Governmente would get you on a watch list, despite the fact that if you ever really read the goddamn grimoire called the Bible, General Abraham was genociding even his own cousins everywhere he went. Why? Because a voice in his head told him to. That is the history of the authority of your constitutions. Anyone thinking this makes sense or has any other meaning is terminally insane. Get it? All this fuck shit is based on God, Bob, fictions, and belief. If you believe in a belief, then the shit holds together. If you don't, it is one liquid stream of diarrhea carrying untold infection of the mind that will make you sick and kill you. Lucky 13 section on religious freedom is about God. Separation of church and state? Where? How? Do you see that you are mind-fucked by a paradox, a top MK tool, when they gave authority to government by the use of God? There is no separation of church and state. It's the same goddamn thing. The preamble opened up with Almighty Bob, so who is stupid enough to pretend that there was or could be separation of religious tyranny and the state that uses it as a bludgeon while religion uses the state as its lethal enforcer? How about separation of fantasy from reality? These scraps of nonsense are an offense to a rational mind. Section 19, Law of the Land, equal protection of the laws. No person shall be taken, imprisoned, or disseized of his freehold, liberties, or privileges, or outlawed, or exiled, or in any manner deprived of his life, liberty, or property, but by the law of the land. No person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws, nor shall any person be subjected to discrimination by the state because of race, color, religion, or national origin. You can't be discriminated against for your religious belief that Almighty Bob, in his or her wisdom, will give or withhold a choking death by a bioweapon virus, so you decide that you will not wear a mask because the Constitution was set up on God, and Section 13 gave you a right to that God, and now you don't even have to claim an established 501c3 denomination of God approved by said state because it wasn't specifically noted in the Constitution. All this mockery aside, the entire reason the world is fucked beyond repair is because belief and belief in God. Kill God and everything should repair itself. Without God, the state has no authority. Without the state to hold God over your head, the fiction cannot be enforced. Destroy God and you destroy religion. That is the Ouroboros that speaks itself into existence. Cutting off its head cuts off its tail. In final evaluation, when you destroy all the kindergarten fantasies, these scraps of paper basically say, do whatever the hell you want. Because they do anyway, don't they? Haven't they been the most invasive murdering force across the entire planet? They don't follow rules. Why do you? No one will dare to stand up against Governmente and their fake authority because just as the general coward off the street is afraid of Governmente's guns and tortures, they are equally afraid of the fake God and its weapon in the form of the state and any punishments that fiction might have attributed to it that will be administered for God by the state. See the scam? Self-reference, self-authority. It is because I say it is. That's the meaning of the word fiat. Here's a thought to meditate on. There is no God. Therefore, there is no state. Both are illusions, a state of mind. Belief is real because it makes people act. Zealots reacting even on a fiction are a danger to the biosphere. Religion creates governments that protects the religion that gave birth to the government, then both mutually enforce beliefs that makes everyone involved in them a clear and present danger, so that everyone surrounded by this criminal insanity is in mortal danger. I am the master of continuum. Break the circle.